And we are live for another episode of An American Werewolf in New Jersey podcast. And for the first time in a long time, instead of being on one end of the stream, he's on the other. I've got, hey, Internet Eric here. Eric, I just want to say, thanks for, always stopping in on the stream, when I've got something going. And, even if it's just to say hello or to stick it out and talk through the episode, I always appreciate it. And, I'm glad you're here now. We can, talk a little more directly.
It's my pleasure, man. I always love being in the comments, heckling you if I need to heckle you, but it's also fun being on this side too. I just love the conversation.
Well, aside from that one time, it's always been a good time. So
Yeah.
Let's not dwell. All right, but we're here to talk about something very special tonight. So if it's okay with you, I guess we'll get it going.
Let's do it.
So just a few seconds ago, we were talking about the greatest all-time movie concepts. And I was doing a few Google searches and came up with, some boxes to check. And I was saying The Matrix. And I said Nolan had 3 movies on there with Inception and Interstellar and Memento. I said even that, and there were some other movies I had never heard of before, more recent movies, actually. Nothing that really went into the 70s or back. But even Pretty Woman was on there, and we were talking, how that's sort of, I don't get it. People love it, whatever. It does have a sort of Grimm's fairy tale kind of, parallel with the downtrodden woman who's, like a Cinderella. We were talking about this, being brought up by the handsome prince and, everyone else is kind of cast aside. But nowhere on any of the lists was James Cameron's The Terminator. And I thought that that's just a criminal oversight.
Yeah, we were talking before we went live is just how many amazing concepts alone are in this one film.
Yeah.
Not just, time travel. We have, AI. We have, the AI coming to life and targeting what they think is dangerous to them. Cyborgs, the fact that, someone from the future has to go to the past to stop an assassination and all this twists and turns. And the fact that this concept wasn't in like that top 10 when you were in, or any top 10 you were looking for, really, really surprised me because of how all this stuff Cameron you know what I mean?
It's unbelievable. I went through about 4. I mean, I wasn't going to sit there and dig for hours, but I got a general feel, and many of the names overlapped. There was a lot of overlap on the lists, but in no list did I find this. And you were saying earlier, and I was, in doing my research, found out that, Cameron dreamed this up in a fever. He was sick. He was doing some sort of studio work, and he was in Rome. And apparently he had a dream while he was sick of a robot or something along those lines crawling out of a fire. And it was like the torso only of the robot. And he felt that, he had this feeling, being in Rome, being sick, he's out of sync with, what he's used to as an American. He's very young at the time. He hasn't made any movies yet. He's not the James Cameron. He's probably just Jimmy or something like that, Jimbo, or something like that. He's completely out of his element. He's out of his time zone, and he manages to put all this together to come out of the gate swinging with a story like this.
Yeah, and you said it great, like coming out swinging, and he hit a home run, big time.
We were just talking last week. We were doing From Dusk Till Dawn, and you were part of that chat. How that was Tarantino's first script, his first paid script.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that these guys can just generate content like that, on first tries, and that's your first effort.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether to be inspired or discouraged. It's just
the way you're right, because we'll definitely get into it. I think Knight has once said it on his channel on Night Watch Zone, how this is like the perfect film. And if this is like Cameron's, we'll say first. Not even he wants to talk about Piranha 2. You know what I mean? The Spawning. Yeah. But it's one of those things. It's one of those things like, okay, what else does this guy have? Or if this is your best, is there anywhere to go but down type of thing? So I could see how it would be a lot of pressure both ways for Cameron.
And I think there were some delays initially. He was still working on scripts for the second Rambo. Apparently, I don't know that was the script that they used, but apparently I saw in several pieces of the research, and maybe I don't know that I'll ever get around to covering the second Rambo. Maybe you and I can do that sometime, just for shits and giggles.
Hey, we're talking Arnold. Why not talk Sly, right?
Yeah, you got to talk Stallone, because as much as Arnold ruled the roost, which he clearly did over everyone. I mean, Arnold was clearly the alpha. Stallone was kind of like the 1 year younger brother, or something like that. And he has put out a lot of good content, a lot of good films over the years. And he's had some pieces of crap too. But,
so was Arnold.
Over the years, I've developed, I went from, appreciating Stallone and, getting probably to about Rocky IV, and then he just started to go over the line into these other things. And they were almost like these made for video kind of, movies that he did. But then coming back now with like a third wind, making movies when he was older, even the collab he did when he did The Expendables. Coming up with the collab with Arnold for Escape Plan. I don't know if you've seen that.
That was fun. I enjoyed that.
That's a really good movie.
It was.
And now coming back again with two more, I think, Rambo movies that I loved. The one where he's in Burma.
That's my favorite one, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic movie. That's my second favorite after the first. And then
Last Blood.
Coming back with Creed.
Oh, Creed, yeah, Creed and Creed 2 were both good, I thought. But
so he's just had this huge resurgence, while Arnold has kind of drifted off to, into the sidelines. He's come back with a couple of Terminator movies. They haven't been that great. But he's still Arnold, you still got to love him.
Yeah.
Maybe we should maybe do a Stallone episode or something.
If this makes sense, I always thought of it like this. Arnold makes the more fun movies, but Stallone makes the better movies, if that makes sense. The character-wise, the way they're written. Arnold, a lot of the times, his was just, the one-liners, the explosions, the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And then when you look at Stallone, if you look really into it, he has some really good character development in some of his stuff. The way he handles a camera, I think, is really good and underrated.
He's a good director,
Exactly. So that's what I mean by that.
Yeah. I could see that. Maybe one of these days I'll sit down and make a comparison list, look at the filmographies, or just check some boxes. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but I remember watching Inside the Actors Studio one time, if you remember that show on Bravo, and Tom Cruise was on there. And I was like, okay, do I want to watch this? I'm like, okay, let's just see what he has to say. And, most people got a 1 hour episode. He got 2 hours. But when they started to list his credits, I was like, oh, shit, I forgot he was in that. And half of the movies that he was in where he wasn't grinning like in Days of Thunder were really, really good. And so, he's another one of those performers coming back to Stallone that, it's kind of easy to underestimate. They're not always, the most cerebral, but they're not bad movies either. Hold on. We got a comment here. John's here in the house. What's up, brother? First efforts work well because no one has told the writer-director they can't do it. being out of the Hollywood system, new artists can be creative in their own way. Yeah, I mean, the recurring theme that we're constantly having is, the execs in the suits stepping in and just kind of stepping over everything. Now, coming back to Stallone just for a second, he was one of the people who was approached, I think, by Cameron to play the Terminator.
Okay.
And believe it or not, who else was approached was Mel Gibson.
Oh, wow. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, that would have been very interesting because Mel Gibson is a hell of an actor.
He is.
He's a hell of a director, and I know he got blackballed, and I know he said some real shitty things.
Yeah.
But I've always been of the belief that fucked up people make the best art. They do. Yeah, we
talked about it many times. You got to separate. You have to separate the person from their work, or else there's going to be so many things you can't listen to, watch, or associate with if you don't.
Yeah, there are people who just have that hole inside of them, and they, fill it one way or another. Now, this is also a true story. I don't know if you know about this. O.J. Simpson was considered for playing the role of the Terminator, but James Cameron
didn't think he was scary enough.
Clearly O.J. Simpson could never harm anyone. That's completely unbelievable. Never. So I'm glad we pushed that off the table.
Yeah, and then the hard thing would be just you go watch the Terminator, and let's just say O.J. didn't get into any trouble, and we kept the franchise going with O.J. There's no way you'd be able to take him seriously after seeing those Naked Gun movies. You know what I mean?
No, and he made. I hate to say it, the opening scene of the first Naked Gun movie with O.J. Simpson was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen in my life.
It's still funny.
And my stomach hurt. I was laughing so hard. So we'll let's just leave O.J. and let's leave him there. Now, we're clearly in a dystopian future, and I think the year is 2029, so it's not that far away.
I was thinking it was that or 25, but it's around there. You're right.
Yeah, it's 2029, and your theme of artificial intelligence has taken over the world and exterminated half or the majority. Maybe 90% of the population. I guess they've got that remaining 10%. 90% of them are slaves or whatever. And then you've got this, I think I'm saying this correctly, you've got this 1% who is, actively fighting this resistance.
Yep.
So at some point, the resistance actually overcomes the AI, and the AI, in its last desperate effort, sends back a cybernetic killing machine to kill the mother of the man who leads the resistance to victory. And that is just a mind, even to say it.
I know.
I feel like I'm contorting I literally feel my brain right now, sort of twisting. I picture a pretzel, like a soft pretzel in my head, saying it almost 40 years later. What an idea.
And then to twist your little pretzel brain a little bit even more.
Now, hold on, it can only take so much.
Okay, we'll just do a little twist. When you find out the relationship of who to the savior of mankind or whatever, the relationship of the person they send back to him, that's another concept that takes a huge twist. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, you can just come out and say it. I mean, the leader of the resistance sends his own father back, the man he realizes is going to become his father in the past, to save his mother.
And the thing is, this is his dad, his father, who we don't know how long he's known. Like John and Kyle Reese have known each other, been together in, I guess you'd say, in the special forces or whatever the resistance is called.
Right.
And so we don't know how close they are, but John knows who he is, obviously, because Sarah, his mom, has told him. But just imagine that decision you have to do. You have to send your father back in time, and he's not going to make it out alive from all the stories your mom has told you. But if you don't send your father back in time to his death, you will never be and then this resistance will never happen, and there's never any chance for hope
Humanity,
or for victory or anything like that.
Well, humanity will just be exterminated.
Exactly. Now that's
Humanity will be
a huge mind fuck right there.
Yeah, he has to weigh his father against the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and ultimately, you know, that kind of math, however difficult, you know, only, you know, that scale doesn't balance.
And it's not just that. Like, he's sending him back, and he knows no one's going to believe a single word this guy says.
Yeah.
Not Sarah, not the police, nobody. So he's already got that against him too, and he's got to convince not just Sarah to run away with him, but to fall in love, conceive a child, and move from there. You know what I mean? So that's a lot.
I don't know if that necessarily was part of Kyle's mission. It was to save her. Yeah, but the other part just kind of happened, and I want to get into that in a minute. I want to come back for a minute to Stallone and Mel Gibson for a second, because the original idea for the Terminator was that he was supposed to be much more anonymous, you know, much more the everyman, much more of the Robert Patrick type, someone who could blend into a crowd, and you know, you wouldn't see that type of person coming. And you can see that by the time they got to the second movie, and from every movie after that, that seems to be the type of Terminator that they are using. And
I also read that Lance Henriksen was also considered as well. Once they wanted that character, they decided they wanted that character to be able to blend into society.
That I didn't hear. I heard that Henriksen got the role, and maybe we're hearing two different things. Henriksen got the role because he was a huge fundraiser for this movie. So, no, I'm not saying you're not wrong. I don't know. Maybe he was offered it at some point, or he wanted to cast for it, something along those lines. But he was also instrumental in getting a lot of money to Cameron. So I know Cameron put him in the movie, but he may have expressed interest. Hold on, John, here was the 1980s. Yes, that's very true. Lance Henriksen was also considered.
Yeah.
Okay. So I caught a retrospective doc on the disc, on the Blu-ray. So he did actually, that is factually correct, that he did raise money for that. But I guess, well, what ends up happening is that Arnold Schwarzenegger comes in to read for the role of Kyle Reese.
Oh.
Yeah, because he was told by his representation that playing a villain at that stage in his career, coming off Conan the Barbarian, in the middle of filming Conan the Destroyer, he's reading for this role for a movie that he's not really interested in. Because I don't know if you remember this movie, he thought it really wasn't going to be that great of a movie, just off the cuff. There was a movie the year before that called The Exterminator. And it was a vigilante movie. I remember this movie with a guy named Robert Ginty.
I have the sequel on Blue. I haven't watched it because I want to see the original first.
Okay, it's kind of a brutal vigilante style movie, and Arnold was like, "Well, they're just making these. You know, first they made the Exterminator, and now they want to make the Terminator, and all these sorts of things." And he was just, he didn't think it was going to be much. He was, just a piece of crap movie, and I'll play a role or something like that. He meets Cameron to read for the role of Reese. As they start to go through the script together, he starts to become intrigued by the Terminator. And so I think there's a story that Cameron, at hearing Arnold Schwarzenegger was coming, sort of made a judgment in his mind that he wasn't going to like him, and that he was going to pick a fight with him, like a verbal fight, and then just say, "Thanks, it hasn't worked out." He was just kind of give him the brush off.
Okay.
He was going to give him the brush off, but then he met him, and Arnold's a really intelligent guy, and he was very impressed by them. And when the meeting was over, each of them went back to their representatives and said, "This is the Terminator." Arnold's like, "I'm the Terminator," and Cameron's like, "This guy is the Terminator. He's not Kyle Reese. He's the Terminator." So nothing changed in the script, but the idea that the Terminator would be this everyman flipped on its head, because now you've hired a gorilla.
Yep.
You
And
know,
now he definitely now at that time, like, he was like super jacked. Like, look at that right
yeah,
there.
look at
Like,
that monster.
he he fit the unstoppable killing machine look. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he only had 17 lines for this movie, less than
Mm-hmm.
100 words.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron ends up sending him there's a photo out there, and I didn't find it, which is half Arnold, half the Terminator, and that was pretty much all it took.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just so impressive and so invested. When I saw the retrospective doc, it was Arnold and Cameron together, and it was only like a 30-minute documentary.
Mm-hmm.
But he talked about how Cameron talked about how Arnold brought ideas to the movie about how the Terminator should move.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when I think he said he went away for like 3 months to go work with weapons, to go understand, to start to learn guns, which of course became his forte for like the next, 1,000 years.
Yeah.
Arnold with a gun,
Yeah, Predator and Commando.
Yeah, Commando, and then True Lies, and
Yep.
Red Heat, and all these sorts of movies. But he started to, and because Arnold understands body movement as a bodybuilder, so he had these movements, where when he would draw the gun, the hand would move, but the shoulder would not. It was these very efficient sort of movements. When you see him and they're in the garage, and I couldn't find a photo of this anywhere.
I think I know what you're talking about. When there's the close up of his face, and you just see his eyes move left.
Yeah, the eyes
right.
move, and then the head. And
Yep.
Cameron said it reminded him of a shark that's just
Yep,
swimming.
a great white shark. Yep.
Yeah, it's this shark that's just swimming, and the eye. It's especially you're especially drawn to it because the eyebrows have been singed off.
Mm-hmm.
And the skin is a little contorted from the heat of the fire.
Yep.
So it's a little bulbous.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of losing a bit at a time.
Yeah, he definitely he looks off big time.
Yeah, he just looks scary, and he's just he's, oh man, it's just something. And those were all Arnold's. Hold on, John says Arnold. Yeah, Arnold needed no CGI.
Exactly.
He needed no CGI to look like a badass. Which he clearly was, and just that, the way that they talked about, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but then I'll come back to it. By the time we get to the raid on the police station, and he says, "I'll be back," he didn't want to do that because he didn't feel that a cyborg used contractions.
That's a good point.
Yeah, he said, a cyborg would never use a contraction. He would say, a machine would never do that. It would say, "I will be back." And Cameron said, "No, we're not changing that. Just go in there and say it." And of course, that became his call sign.
Yep.
For the next 10 years.
It was like, like the modern day, like Stan Lee cameo, in the Marvel universe. Where's Stan Lee going to show up? Or like when Alfred Hitchcock was like, okay, where's Hitchcock going to be for like the 2 seconds? You're waiting for Arnold to say the line, and then you're like, there he goes, like
there he goes,
Commando, and everything.
Yeah, I'll be back, Bennett. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Not to mention the way that he interpreted facial expressions. And he talked about this in that the Terminator should not show emotion, but it should show focus.
Yes.
And determination. So when he breaks into the original Sarah Connor's home, and you can just there's just nothing else on his, that's just his sole purpose. And my favorite shot is in the Tech Noir.
Oh God, that whole sequence is so good.
Yeah. Dude. Yeah, he just walks up in a straight line. He just makes that 90-degree turn. And then he walks up on her, and he just brings it. And you can see, it's just the arm. He just brings it slowly into focus.
And in this picture here, look at his eyes set on the laser focus.
Yeah.
And see, and I'll tell you what, I'm a big. A lot of people hate him. I'm a big fan of cliches. Okay, I when they work, they work. And sure. I love the part in Tech Noir right before this. It's slow motion. You got
Yeah.
the 80s dance music and everything. She drops her napkin or something like that, and she bends down to go pick it up in slow motion. That's when he turns his head to look at her direction. He just misses her and starts walking. I think it's done well because it's that tension build.
Yeah.
Because of the slow motion. Again, you got everyone having fun in the background. You know, shit's going to hit the fan, and he just missed his target because we just saw what he did to the first Sarah Connor, and that was just her alone in her house. Yeah. Now we're in a dance hall or whatever, you know, full of people. Imagine what's going to happen now.
Yeah, and this is really where the movie starts to kick off. Because at that point, you know, you sort of understand. You find out very quickly what Kyle Reese's, you know, or who this person is. This other person that you've been sort of loosely connected. And if you're a first time viewer, you know, you have no idea what this guy's about.
Right.
You know, that sort of thing. And you know, speaking of, we're talking about, you know, the great Michael Biehn.
Oh God, he's so good in this and everything I've seen him in. Yeah,
I've never known him to disappoint in a role, and I was so glad to see him recently in the second season of The Mandalorian.
Okay.
Even if he was only in for one episode, but it was, I mean, I'll just anything to see him because he just brings back so many great memories.
Yeah, he like whether it be this, or like there's a deleted scene in Terminator 2 where he's in a dream sequence, or The Abyss.
Yeah.
Aliens. Even, you know, you were talking Robert Rodriguez a couple of weeks ago or so from Dusk Till Dawn. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
In Planet Terror, as I think he's the brother of Jeff Fahey, and they're them
he's
going
the sheriff or something. Isn't it? They're arguing over the barbecue recipe.
Yes, it's stupid scenes. They're both shot and dying, and they're arguing over fucking barbecue, but they steal the scene. You know what I mean? And that goes to the talent of Michael. He's so good, and he's so, I think, underrated. Like if you know, you and I, you know, we love film, so we know Michael Biehn. I don't want to say no one knows who he is, but usually they're like, hey, it's the Terminator guy. You know what I mean? But if you look at his filmography, he's done some great films. Like, especially, I just finally saw The Abyss the other day, like a month or so ago.
It's a good movie.
I like it. And who, you know, it's almost 3 hours long. I've seen the director's cut. He's in it maybe 40, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
He's awesome in it. He
steals most of the scenes because he's slowly going crazy.
And then now you see why Cameron's used him at least 3 times.
Yeah. I loved him in The Rock.
Yeah, he was good in that too.
I love The Rock. I love that movie. I gotta get that movie on Blu-ray. Actually, now that I think about it, The Rock. How can you not want to watch The Rock? Yeah, and Tombstone.
Yeah,
he's Johnny Ringo.
Yeah,
Johnny Ringo. Yeah, absolutely. One of the cowboys. Now, Michael Biehn cast for this, and he said that a lot of the people who were, you know, reading for it were just like these absolute tough guys. You know, I think, you know, what Biehn did, I think he tried to present himself as a bit more vulnerable because he's clearly a hurt person. You know, he's a very damaged, you know, and we've talked about this too in a lot of the movies that we cover. So many of the characters are just damaged people.
Yep.
And this guy clearly is, you know, either post-traumatic stress.
Oh yeah, because he has the nightmares. There's a couple scenes where he's having nightmares of what he did in the future.
Yeah, and you're seeing it from his perspective. And that shot that I have in the intro is the great Dr. Franco Colombo, who was a contemporary of Arnold's in the bodybuilding scene and one of Arnold's best friends, and he recently just passed away. And I remember, you know, when Arnold was in competition, that was kind of towards the beginning of my noticing Arnold, because I remember Lou Ferrigno as well. But there was the 3 of them, and he plays that Terminator in the flashback scene, where the picture of Sarah burns, and Kyle just gets kind of, you know, knocked silly. So, you know, you're seeing all these things from his perspective. And when the car flips over, he's caught in the burning car. And, you know, he's just suffered so much.
And if you think about it, you're talking about how vulnerable he is. Think about the first time we see him. He's completely nude from the transfer from the future or to the past, however you want to say it. And he's in pain. Arnold shows up since he's a cyborg. He stands up, he walks, he looks over the city. when Kyle appears, first off, we don't know how far he drops, and he just hits the ground like a splat.
Yeah.
And then what we see, he's just groaning and like clenching himself from the travel. He's smoking and everything, and you already see, because he's nude, he's already got burn scars all over him. So this man has seen some battle damage.
Yeah.
So when we first see him, he's already vulnerable, and then it just keeps getting worse the more we learn about him.
Well, he said that so many of the other people who read for it, and he didn't mention any names, but he said they tried to play it the opposite way. You know, they almost took the Terminator kind of, you know, unfeeling thing with them, and he said, you know, that wasn't what Cameron wanted. The only thing that they said, because Cameron really liked him right away, and he called his agent and he said, "Could you get him to drop a Southern accent?" And he's like, "What?" He's like, "What Southern accent?" But apparently that morning, just a quick aside, he had read for something else. He was reading for like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. So he forgot to drop the accent between the two. And I guess that's what you're doing out there. You know, you're out there and you're trying to hustle, and you know, you're reading for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in the morning, and in the afternoon you're reading for the Terminator. You know, so, you know, God bless him. He's out there, you know, getting after it, and, you know, just trying to get any work that isn't, you know, nailed down. Yeah. You know, and I guess that's how it's done. Now, for Bean, what he actually did, he researched the Polish resistance during World War II.
Really?
To play this role as a soldier in the human resistance against Skynet.
Okay.
So, you know, maybe that's where he was able to channel some of the emotions, you know, and maybe that's where he was able to offer, or how, you know, or part of how, because he's just a talented actor, how he was able to offer such a fantastic performance.
Oh, he's so good from not just the vulnerability. Like, one of my favorite scenes with Michael is when he's talking to, he's handcuffed at the station, and he's trying to make the most absurd story sound believable. And I mean, you got Lance Henriksen, like, and his partner giggling in the background, and then you got Silverman, the doctor, talking to him, and then eventually Michael Biehn, Kyle Reese, he just stops giving a shit. He looks right at the camera that's filming her, and he's talking about how it will basically rip her heart out and not give a shit. And then, you know, it freezes on his rage in his face. And it's just his emotions and his acting is just so good. It goes from here to here to here, and it's all believable.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think he played a similar sort of character in Aliens, where he played Hicks, Corporal Hicks. Just good stuff. Just good stuff. And I think, you know, I think it's worthwhile to point out that the resistance, the Polish resistance, and, you know, like things like the Warsaw Uprising during World War II, they were doomed efforts. You know, so, you know, he's channeling that sense of, you know, inevitability, and, you know, that you're fighting sort of this hopeless battle, you know, but you just keep on going. He didn't seem to fight, you know, like he wasn't, you know, studying these, you know, other types of, you know, sort of rebellions that were successful. And he seems to have deliberately selected something that just didn't last. Yeah. You know, they gave everything that they had, but eventually they were conquered and killed, and, you know, and that's how it kind of played out. That's
the best way to say it, you know, because I don't think, if you think about it, like, you can go more towards the series and it gets campier and campier, but if you focus on the way the resistance was handled, it always looked like it was a kamikaze effort type of thing. They knew they were going to die, and they probably weren't going to be successful.
What's that old saying? You plant trees, you're never going to get to sit under. You know, it's that kind of thing. Now we can't go too far without talking about Sarah Connor. Now, Sarah in this movie is played by the phenomenal Linda Hamilton. And has become one of the greatest women, I'd say, in action movies, period, beyond sci-fi, beyond horror. One of the great female heroines. I'm trying to think, up there with Ellen Ripley. I'm trying to think of it. It's always difficult for me to pick someone that stands next to those two.
It's real hard. And the thing is like, I don't want to get too into things going around social media, but a lot of people say, there have never been strong female characters until a lot of these like comic booky characters come out. Like, you obviously have never seen the Terminator or Aliens, have you?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you'd be surprised how these movies get lost in the generation gaps.
You're right.
And you're probably absolutely correct. I mean, I'm sure. I could talk to a number of young people that have probably seen every Disney Marvel movie, in the MCU. But and so they would talk about Black Widow.
Yeah.
Or like Shuri from Black Panther or something like that. But if you were to say, hey, what about Ellen Ripley? They'd probably look you dead in the face and say,
who? Exactly.
In which case, what do you do in a situation like that? My inclination is just to turn and walk away. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I suppose, do I want to take the extra step, which I already know that I don't.
It's not worth the headache.
Yeah, it's not worth the headache. It's not worth the headache. But we've got Linda Hamilton, who, is still going. Just recently, I think within the past 3 years, came back to the Terminator franchise.
Yep.
Now, originally, she reads in the story as being 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's supposed to be a 19-year-old, this very delicate sort of girl. I mean, she's still a girl, as opposed to Linda Hamilton, who I think at the time was probably close to 28.
Yeah, I was going to say, I always thought she was at least in her 30s when she did the first one.
She reads, though, in the script as being 19, very delicate. She's not like, I don't know how you feel about this, but she's not a Kylie Jenner type. She's not the girl who stops the party the minute she walks in. Like everybody doesn't stop when she walks in.
She's the one that hangs out in the she's the one in the corner by herself,
Yeah, or probably, the one you probably feel you could approach because she would be cool.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. And I mean, I think she just puts on an amazing performance because hers, I think, has the most range.
Yeah, everyone brings up her character in part 2, which is great. I love her character in this one much more.
Yeah, she is an innocent waitress working in like a Waffle House.
Getting ice cream put down her skirt and living with a roommate with a giant lizard and this shit.
Yeah, and the roommate's boyfriend, is like putting dirty calls through, not understanding who he's talking to.
Exactly.
It's clearly like a very young, person set up here. All these things going on, and she starts to experience this trauma by understanding that someone's killing all the Sarah Connors in Los Angeles. Because that is how the Terminator has decided that's what it's decided is the easiest way, is just to eliminate them systematically.
Oh God. And then just imagine, like we were talking about, the people who only know about, Black Widow and stuff like that, who have never heard about the Terminator. Imagine what they would wonder with the scene where the Terminator is looking through the phone book and they're wondering what the hell a phone book is and stuff like that.
Yeah. But, thinking about this now, and I said I wanted to get back to it, but I didn't at the time. I still would like to come back to this idea of Mel Gibson, because if you get the everyman sort of Terminator, then Mel Gibson to me would just be perfect.
Oh yeah, especially he's fresh off of Mad Max.
Yeah.
Gallipoli
and this sort of stuff. And we all know that Mel Gibson can play a cold bastard. And
Payback.
That's a great movie. That's a fantastic movie. I'm thinking Lethal Weapon.
That too, yeah, of course.
Especially those first 2 Lethal Weapons. You're just looking at what could have been a tremendous. I mean, obviously, no disrespect. We're here talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger,
right?
But, if you're in a parallel universe, so to speak, it is sci-fi. To consider a young Mel Gibson as the Terminator, that would have been something, because obviously both of their careers skyrocketed.
Oh yeah, it's all around the same time.
Yeah,
so I think the first Lethal Weapon was around this, wasn't it?
I think it was the year before Die Hard, which always pisses me off because Die Hard gets the credit as the Christmas movie.
Yeah.
And Lethal Weapon was there the year before. And if you ask me, Lethal Weapon is actually the better movie.
You know what? I think it is too.
Yeah, it's the better movie. You know, Bruce Willis. I love Die Hard. Don't misunderstand. Mm-hmm. It's a great movie, but it's not.
It's not Lethal Weapon.
No, Die Hard is kind of like one-liners and stuff like that. But okay, you know, so be it. But yeah, I mean, this idea, the everyman, and then moving on to Robert Patrick, and then they got a woman in the third one, which I actually thought was a passable Terminator movie.
Yeah, Christina Loken, she was really good. Yeah, as the female Terminator, I thought, because she, you know, she wasn't there. I mean, there's one scene where, of course, she makes her boobs bigger, but that's, you know, just for a ha-ha moment. Yeah. But I think she sells the ice cold Terminator look too, and she looks like, it's Los Angeles. She looks like an everyday blonde that you'll see walking up and down, you know, the strip and everything.
Yeah, with the sort of frozen, bitchy kind of features, you know, like you dare to look at me, you know, this kind of thing, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that worked well. That was kind of where I ended my
involvement,
sort of a love for the Terminator movies. Now, don't misunderstand me. That doesn't mean that I haven't seen every Terminator movie afterwards in the theater. But, you know, where I sort of get off the train, now I kind of do it where I roll my eyes and I say, I complain about it. And then I say in advance, right after I roll my eyes, I'm going to go see it, but.
Yeah, you know, it's that hope. He's like, okay, maybe this one. And then you're just like, okay, well, maybe the next one.
Yeah. Now, because you wonder how many, and I hate to say this, you know, I don't want to get struck by lightning, you wonder how much time Arnold has left.
I think from what I've read and from what I've seen from Dark Fate, it seems like that was going to be his last hurrah. And he was going to give it to I'll just call her the blonde. I don't know who played the Terminator or whatever. Yeah. I think they were trying to pass the torch if they could to keep the franchise going. I don't think it's going to with as much money as it lost. It was a huge bomb. We'll see. I don't know.
The one with Emilia Clarke wasn't great either.
See, that one I liked.
That was okay.
I'll tell you what. I liked the one with Emilia Clarke. I'll put this in air quotes for the wrong reasons. It was more of a fun movie because, you know, it's been so long keeping the franchise going, so I just rolled with it. But it's a definite, I don't want to say fall from grace from the first two, but it's not the same franchise as it was. That's for sure.
No, and that's why I feel that the third movie holds up. I think that Nick Stahl was a passable John Connor. I love Nick Stahl. I
do too. And I'll tell you what, a lot of people like to shit on part 3. I'll tell you what, that ending for part 3, where Judgment Day happens, and he's giving the speech to anyone who's left after Skynet is sending out all the nukes. I didn't think that was going to happen. That was a whole shit moment for me in the theater.
Yeah.
That was an ending.
Yeah, a buddy of mine dragged that to me the last week that it was playing in the theaters. And he's like, you got to see this. I'm like, I don't want it. You know, it's part 3. Even back then, I was like, you know, I don't want to see it. It's part 3, man. He was like, come on, we're going to see this movie. So we're sitting down. And I was like, holy shit, this is a really good movie. I was wrong, man.
Yeah.
You know, it was a damn good movie. And Claire Danes was good.
She was, I liked her a lot.
Yeah, not a problem. Now, you know, we've talked about, you know, in every podcast, your podcast, my podcast, you know, every podcast that we, you know, happen to frequent, you know, the influence of the suits, you know, at some point. And apparently they had a 50-50 thing going here where they actually wanted to introduce an android dog for Kyle Reese, which Cameron just shut down completely.
That just sounds stupid.
Well, that's very lucky. I mean, being a first-time director, you know, that he was able to, you know, win that fight.
Yeah, it makes you like he's got, to my knowledge, like this is 84. This isn't 1991 James Cameron, who hasn't already had a bunch of hit movies. What kind of pull did this guy have to tell the execs, you know, F off? You know what I mean?
Well, what he did was he compromised on the second thing, which it was the executive's idea to increase the love interest between Sarah and Kyle, in which case he consented to that. So I don't know if that included the sex scene or whatever. But whatever they asked, so he gave on one thing and held firm on the other, and I guess they felt that was a sufficient compromise. I don't know if you could I don't know if a new director could get away with that today.
I'll tell you what, I think I'd rather have the sex scene we got than some stupid ass robotic dog.
Yeah, because that reminds me of Ang Lee's The Hulk with the Gamma Dogs.
Yeah,
which was Yeah. Now we should not, because I don't want to talk about the Gamma Dogs under any circumstances. We should not forget what a great supporting cast.
Oh God, yes.
We've got Lance Hendrickson, who we talked about. We've got Paul Winfield.
Oh God, those two together.
They were so
much
great.
fun.
Lieutenant Traxler, just cutting up on each other like all the time.
Jesus Christ, when they're sitting there and they're laughing at Kyle Reese and who's the black actor's name again? Paul
Winfield.
Paul Winfield. When he's looking for his coffee and Lance is like, "Oh, it's cold. I don't care. I put my cigarette in it. Yo, mama." That type of stuff. Yeah. It was fun. Yeah. These guys have worked together, you can tell, for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
They're like brothers, and I love it.
Yeah. And they're just cutting each other up like all the time, which is kind of like what two guys working together usually do.
And then when the massacre at the police station happens and Lance finds Paul, that's a good scene too.
He's devastated. You can see it's only like a second scene, but there's emotion in Lance Hendrickson.
Because he looks at his buddy fallen, and then he turns and Arnold's already killed half the police station. Yeah. Without a second thought, Lance turns around, he yells, "Hey," and starts firing, and then he's gone. But that shows that camaraderie. You know, that's what I love.
You don't even hesitate. Now, lest we forget.
Oh, Bill, I love him.
The great Bill Paxton.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
That was a huge loss.
Killed by a Terminator, an alien, and a Predator.
Yeah.
That is quite a resume. I mean, any American would be proud.
Yep. Him and Lance are the only ones.
Yep. Now, we should also talk about Stan Winston.
Yes.
Who created some of the best practical effects that to this day, I mean, sometimes you look at it's a little dated because it's been almost 40 years. But I mean, a lot of that still holds up.
I'll tell you what.
The scene in the bathroom where that looks a little dated.
The arm, I think, looks okay. But when you see Arnold's head, I mean, that's how it is. It's in horror movies or anything. When you make a fake head, it's hard to get that right, especially with like the eyes. But I'll tell you this: the first time I saw the Terminator is I was real young, and my parents had like recorded it off of Fox TV, so all the good stuff was cut out. Oh, holy shit! When I finally saw that uncut, and he's digging out his damaged eye, and he's fixing his forearm and all the gore, I'm like, this practical effects, which we sadly are missing nowadays. We've talked this ad nauseum. Stan Winston was fantastic, and then you look at his resume, like the Predator, Aliens. Him and Rick Baker were like the top, like the kings of that type of stuff in the 80s. Not to forget Tom Savini, but
we can only hope that the pendulum swings back soon. Where I personally, and I think you and many others are a little exhausted by the CGI overload.
Big time.
It feels lazy.
Cheaper isn't always better.
Yeah, it doesn't connect cognitively. I think was it you? No, I was talking to somebody, and I refer to this a lot. But when Rob Zombie was on Joe Rogan, you were talking to me when. Yeah, he was watching The Phantom Menace. And he couldn't figure out why Liam Neeson couldn't act.
Yeah, because he's in front of a green screen. There's nothing to act with.
Yeah, Liam Neeson isn't trained to act with, to interact with a tennis ball. And he's like, he couldn't figure it out. He's like, what the hell's wrong with Liam Neeson? This is a Star Wars movie. Liam Neeson is in a Star Wars movie. What the hell's going on? And 20 years later, here we are.
Yeah.
But I mean, what he did at the time. And there's a story where Arnold talks about him telling Stan Winston when Stan started to tell him the things he wanted to do, and he's like, "That's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that. Like, no one can do that. That what you're talking about is impossible." And he said, "Arnold, I can do it." He went, "I can do it, Arnold." He said, "But you're going to have to sit for long periods of time."
Mm-hmm.
I could do it. And he's talking about the scene in the movie where he's in the 18-wheeler and he tells that trucker to get out.
Oh, yeah.
And his face has just been road rashed to death. That the metal, is sort of coming through, but you can see the teeth. I think I have a photo here. Yeah, here it is. This.
God, that is, look, and like I said right there, he's already off, or you said it, because of the no eyebrows. So that's weird enough as it is. And now half of his face, like right around the lip area, is already gone.
Yeah, because I think he's had the motorcycle crash.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just been dragged along his face for so long, and then he just, and that's what's frightening about it, is that, he's still sort of keeping the veneer. And they also talk so much about how Arnold's accent worked, because especially in 1984, Arnold was an unknown, largely. People weren't used to his accent, and it sounded like something that Skynet hadn't been able to perfect.
Yeah, it was very robotic.
It sounded synthetic.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded synthetic, and it worked perfectly. Now that is something that obviously Mel Gibson and Stallone could not have imitating. Because that just comes naturally, because that's who Arnold was. And we've been sitting here talking about this for 51 minutes for a movie that lasted 2 weeks at number one, to be replaced in the third week by "Oh God, You Devil."
I shouldn't laugh, but wow.
Yeah.
I mean, no knock against George Burns, but wow.
No, it only lasted for 2 weeks. It's through, again, the ability to see this movie at home. And we've talked about this with all the Carpenter movies, all box office flops.
Yeah.
All of them. None of them made any money. And then, received fresh air through home video, VHS, and then maybe HBO, and because that was the only channel, I think, back then. It was just HBO or Betamax or, whatever, you were going to watch it on video cassette.
Or, like 20th Century Fox, like they always had like the Saturday night movie or something like that. That's where I saw a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a kid.
Hold on. John's here again. George Burns equals the Terminator. No, it doesn't equal the Terminator. It doesn't equal the Terminator at all.
Yeah, not even close.
Oh, jeez. But, I mean, again, this is the case with so many of these movies that we cover that 40 years later are now, these classics that were defeated by movies that have just been forgotten about in their time. They were defeated by movies, and you're like, what?
I'll tell you this, nowadays, my daughter just turned 9. And she's known who the Terminator is. She's never seen one yet. She's too young for like the violence and stuff. But she knows who the Terminator is. I guarantee you, if I told her, hey, do you know who George Burns is? She'd be like, who the heck is George Burns?
Yeah.
Oh, he was just some old time comic who liked to smoke a cigar. But she knows, there's probably 5 Terminator movies. She knows that the guy, he's an evil robot who became good as the movies go along. Everybody knows who the Terminator is. You and I know who George Burns is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That type of situation.
Although I go far back enough to admit that I've never actually seen it. I didn't watch those Oh God movies. I don't plan on watching those Oh God movies.
I haven't seen them since I was a kid. I don't really want to revisit.
Yeah. Rest in peace, George Burns and John Denver and, all that. But nobody gives credit to the VC or HBO Showtime connection. Yeah. I mean, that revolutionized. And
big time.
So much of how, film companies could make revenue. You have a limited stay in the theaters, and then back before VHS, it would come to network television when you had the 3 big networks, and they would edit the hell out of the movies.
Yep.
so you couldn't really understand because it was like the Sunday night movie on CBS, and they try to show you The Exorcist in like 1976,
Oh,
and you're like, what? You know,
I think I've said it on Knight's channel. Again, like the Terminator, the first time I saw The Exorcist was like the edited, for USA Network. And then when I finally saw that, I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow. They cut this movie to hell. No pun intended.
You shouldn't even show it.
There's no point.
No. And, I remember back then they were even editing Jaws.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were editing, I guess when, I think Robert Shaw, when he got eaten.
Oh, Jesus.
I think certain scenes where they get that little Kintner boy, where the shark gets the little Kintner boy.
They edit it. It's just insane how they edit things. Like, we haven't brought up how Dick Miller's in this movie. I love Dick Miller. He's the gun shop owner. That's one of the best, what do you say? I want to,
you can't do that.
just what you see, pal, when he asks for like the laser gun or some shit like that. And on the version I saw recorded off TV, Arnold's, putting the bullets in, hey, you can't do that, wrong. And it just, you hear the gunshot, and it just, the Fox version, it just cuts to the outside of the gun shop. But when you watch it uncut, you have like the smoking barrel and everything. It's just things like that are just edited to shit. But man, I love Dick Miller, and he was great.
I hate to totally geek out, but it's phase plasma rifle with a 40-watt range.
Yeah, hey, just what you see, pal.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we talked about some of the themes. I mean, and these themes, well, at least one of them is relevant, AI. We're in 2021, and in 2029, AI, or, at some point in that particular future, AI becomes aware and just decides to kill.
You
everybody.
Never know. It seems this goofy ass fever dream concept from 1984, seems a little bit more plausible with at least the AI stuff. Once you get closer to where we are now.
Yeah. I saw another theme that they addressed, and it was about masculinity, and that there's always a need to increase the human, the male form. Like, it could always be stronger. And they said, it goes back to maybe like the $6 Million Man, where he starts to become bionic. And then you get to, something like this, the Terminator. And then, it probably peaks out a couple of years later when you start to get to RoboCop.
Yeah.
Where it's more synthetic than human. I haven't seen the original RoboCop in a long time. I have to go back to that.
I watched that. I watched it maybe a couple months ago. It still holds up. I will tell you what, man. This is your show, but if you ever want to talk Paul Verhoeven, come get a hold of me. Whether it's RoboCop, Starship Troopers, Total Recall, I don't care. What it is, even if it's Basic Instinct. I love Paul Verhoeven, so I just want to throw that out there.
Okay. Yeah. I like all those movies. I'd be happy to hook one of those up. We'll have to set it up. Definitely. Sounds good. I'm thinking that's probably a good place to kind of close it out, I think. Unless there was something else you wanted to get into about this.
Not really. I mean, we talked about, I really like well, let's go to like the strong female characters. I like how she starts off. Like we said, she's this woman, she's living with an annoying roommate with, the sex fiend boyfriend and all that. And she's making shit wages as a waitress. And then she has, just imagine, you have that dropped on you. Your son is going to be the leader of the resistance. And I like how, I only knew Linda Hamilton from Beauty and the Beast, that TV show, because my mom used to watch it with Ron Perlman as the Beast.
Yeah. My mom watched that too.
Yeah. And it's great. Like, as I've gotten older and I can look at movies differently from like when I was a kid, you do see her gradually get stronger. And then by the end, Kyle Reese, he's all busted and bloody. And she's the one saying, "Get on your feet, soldier. Let's go." Yeah. And then it's great. It's funny saying this now because, Arnold was the king of the 80s one-liners. Just look at, Commando and stuff like that. She's the one with the final one-liner when she says, "You're terminated, fucker." And then she just crushes him. And that's great. And then that ending shot where the little boy takes the picture of her, and he says a storm's coming. Her final words, I know.
I know, yeah.
She knows shit's gonna happen, then she drives off into the storm.
Yeah.
I think that ending is perfect if you think about it that way.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, and I don't know. Maybe I never even noticed that she drove off into the storm. But
look at it that way.
It's just there's again, I'm lucky. And this is kind of why I target these films the way I do. There's no fat on this script. It's fantastic direction.
And then one more thing, we haven't talked about how good that iconic score is. I don't know if it was it Alan Silvestri? I'm not sure, but
I'm not 100% either.
Yeah, but that iconic, score, it's just there you go. Everyone knows the Terminator score, and again, as she's driving into the storm, that's what we have during the ending credits, and I just love it. It's a wonderful score.
And the idea was that every year, the demand, especially as it spread throughout the world into people's homes in various formats, the demand for a second movie grew.
Yep.
And Cameron said about every 6 months he would get a phone call from Arnold, and Arnold would shoot the shit for like about 5 minutes, and then he would get down to what he really wanted. How's Terminator 2 coming? And I'm working on it, Arnold. I'm working on it. But I mean, obviously they were both. But by the time they got back together in '91. Neither of them were fledgling.
You're right.
Movie people. I mean, they were on a completely different level, probably on the highest level.
And then got back together in '94 for True Lies.
Yeah, which
was different.
Leaned a little into the campy, the campy direction, but for its time, it was really, really good. It was really, really good. And again,
I agree.
Bill Paxton, Jamie Lee Curtis. This was another thing too. That's what I wanted to bring up. One of Cameron's influences for this movie was Carpenter's Halloween.
You can see that because a lot of people make a comparison they say, if you think about it, you can see this as a slasher film as well.
Yeah. He's just out there operating. He just shows up one day and he's just doing what he's going to do and just get out of the way. That's the best thing you can do.
You think about it, you replace the gun for a knife. He could be like Michael Myers stalking Jamie Lee Curtis, silent killer, I guess you want to say. So I definitely see a lot of the parallels when people say this could also be a horror film.
Yeah, Carpenter was an influence for Cameron. I had talked about it with Knight yesterday. You were there, and we were talking about how, by the time you get to Nightmare on Elm Street, slashers had kind of been done to death.
Yeah.
So they went, sort of they made like a lateral move, I think I said, and, turned it into a supernatural slasher. This slasher can enter your dreams and, these sorts of things. But here, you've gone even further, even to a more lateral move, completely carving out, this virgin sort of territory, with like a cyborg who's just a killing machine.
Yep, and I'm a sucker for any type of time travel, so that's what first drew me as a kid, because I'm a kid of the '80s. I was born in '81, so Back to the Future was one of my biggest things growing up.
Of course.
So when I found out as I got older, I'm like, we have a robot coming from the future to the past. I was already hooked. And then I fell in love with it already, even more when I finally watched it.
Yeah. It's, I guess, Nolan is trying. I've spent more time with this show talking horror than sci-fi. And, I'll have to balance that out at some time in the future. But for right now, I'm thinking, the only person who's making these sort of complex movies is Christopher Nolan. Because we were talking last night about who's making good horror, and I said it's happening on the indie circuit. But these types of movies, like the Terminator, require huge budgets.
Yeah,
you can't make a cheap Terminator movie. you can't make a cheap time travel movie, really. I mean, I guess you could. It would have to be a hell of a thing to do.
Yeah.
But these are big budget. You're going to need big studio, big money, big ticket kind of things. So the only person that I'm aware of right now in the mainstream that's doing it is Christopher Nolan. I guess he did Inception, Interstellar. Depending on how you feel about that, it's not bad. I mean, any Christopher Nolan movie is probably better than 70% of the other movies that are out there. And I didn't see Tenet yet. I still haven't seen that.
No, I haven't seen that yet either.
It's on HBO. They brought it back to HBO.
Okay.
So if you have that, it's available now. But they're just not making these types of movies anymore. In fact, I'm trying to think. Sci-fi is really not big on the radar these days.
No, I think the only sci-fi movies out there are those cheesy made for a lot of them are made for video, but I'm talking about like the cheesy, really garbage. Let's find out who hasn't worked in 25 years. Let's put him in a movie to fight. A Sharktopus.
Lorenzo Lamas and
Jaleel White versus Sharktopus or some crap like that. And it's tough. I mean, I wish I was a big sci-fi kid growing up. Not just Back to the Future, but Aliens or any of that stuff. And it would be nice to see that make a resurgence.
What's happened is the Marvel has just monopolized. Marvel has monopolized everything. They've got.
You're not wrong, dude.
And they're not bad movies. I mean, I'm a teacher. I'm a school teacher.
Okay.
So the year is coming to a close. The kids had a free day yesterday where they just either went outside or stayed inside, and we're like, well, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, we want to watch a movie, which is approved. And so I brought I have a laptop and I just logged into Disney, and we ended up watching Civil War. It's not a bad movie. They're great action, solid performances. I thought the performances were pretty good. The direction, I think that was a Russo brothers movie.
Yes.
So it was solid stuff, but they've cornered the market on like everything: fantasy, sci-fi, action.
It's too much. It's overkill, if you ask me.
It's been, what Iron Man hit in 2008. So we're going on 13 consecutive years. Now, I brought up something interesting yesterday, which I think you heard. Marvel really started in '98. Their platform was horror.
Yeah, Blade.
It was Blade. But Tobey Maguire gets a lot of the credit. But I think if they double back into horror, which I think they're about to do now in this new phase, I think it's going to be watered down.
I know. The reason why I think Tobey Maguire and Spider-Man get more credit is Spider-Man was the more popular character. They've been trying to get Spider-Man to the big screen for a long, long time, and it was just such a huge blockbuster. Sadly, they forgot about poor old Blade, which, don't get me wrong, I think you even said it is, I enjoy the Raimi ones, at least the first two, but man, it's hard to top Blade. Not just as a Marvel movie, but just as a great action film, a great horror film. Wesley Snipes I never knew Wesley Snipes was a martial artist until I saw Blade.
Yeah, you got great martial arts, you got great action, you got horror, you got gore. That's a graphic movie. And
Chris Christopherson as Whistler in all three movies. Even say what you want about the third one. In all three movies, he is my favorite character because he steals every scene he is in. Yeah. But I think we were talking about it in the chat. It's like I'm pretty sure we're gonna get a PG-13 Blade, and that it doesn't sit well with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Disney's not making any R-rated movies.
No, they need the young kids to come see it.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, and that was I think why it doesn't get attached to Marvel, because people don't recognize that Blade is a Marvel character. They don't recognize the attachment of that. Marvel does have a whole horror shelf out there. They have a huge Dracula shelf. They have Werewolf by Night. I'm not sure if the Man Thing would cover, into the horrors. It might a little bit. They've got Blade. They've got Morbius.
Yes. I'm excited for that. I'm very interested to see how they're going to do Morbius. Fingers are crossed. I didn't mind Venom. It definitely needed to be more adult, but then again, what are you going to do? You got to get the kids in to see Venom. So I get it. I don't have to like it, but I get it. But we'll see how they're going to do Morbius. I mean, PG-13 vampire. It's you know what I'm trying to get at.
No, I'm trying to think of a PG-13 vampire movie that I like.
I can't think of one,
and I can't think of one.
You know, I'm wearing Lost Boys right now. That's
as close as you're ever going to get.
Yeah, but like Near Dark, that was great, but that was rated R.
Yeah, how are you going to make Snakeland PG-13?
Yeah, you can't.
You're not going. It's not going to happen. But I don't know. I heard. Do you follow The Critical Drinker?
No, I've never heard of it.
No, The Critical Drinker he's a YouTube podcaster. He's extremely extremely insightful, and he feels that this is the beginning of the end for Marvel with this new phase. That with the loss of Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. Turning the Hulk smart. Doing all these different things that they're not going to be able to recapture. That they'll still make good movies and they'll still make money, but the shine is coming off, the bloom is coming off the rose. Yeah,
I think you're right. I'll leave it for another time with my thoughts on Endgame, but I think they really kind of I don't want to say screwed the pooch with that one, but there are so many decisions that they did with that one that I wasn't happy. And you brought up Professor Hulk or whatever the hell we're going to call him. And the less said, the better. But I think you're right, because other than Blade, which it hasn't even given a release date yet, I don't know anything about any of these new characters other than the new Doctor Strange, which Raimi's doing. Yeah. So there's still hope, but I'm not excited about anything coming out. So we'll see.
I wasn't excited at all. I was confused about that Eternals trailer.
I don't know what that is either.
Yeah, I don't care necessarily. And I think Critical Drinker was talking about this in terms of Thor. He spent the past few movies just getting beat up by all the women. So they've become like modern, woke.
And then now the next Thor movie is Natalie Portman's becoming the new Thor. So who the hell knows?
She's gonna beat him up. He got beat up by the Valkyrie. He got beat up by Kate Blanchett. He's like the most powerful, most powerful.
He's a god
in the universe.
Yeah,
he's getting beat up by like everybody. And he said he didn't hold out much hope for
Yeah, I'll check out the podcast for sure. I'm very interested.
I'll send you a link to his channel.
Okay, good.
All right, I think that's as good a place as any. We've been going for about an hour 10. What's going on with your show? You want to tell people?
Two Beer Losers. We're planning on because we've had some stuff going on, internet wise and stuff. We're planning on a week from this Saturday returning, live streaming. And we're also going to record a couple ones in advance because we got some travel happening.
Okay,
but we'll still have, but uploads will be coming. And what it is just me and my buddy Alex. We used to just talk one film, but now we pick two films that are somewhat interconnected. Doesn't matter how loosely, and then we just shoot the shit. And I think you mentioned it last night. Knight mentioned it. How basically we're always having opposing viewpoints.
Yeah,
and that's what I like about it, though, is it's not – I don't want to, toot our own horns, but I like it how we're not ranting at each other. It's still conversation like you and I are having now, but he pretty much hates everything I enjoy, and then I give what he enjoys, a second thought and stuff like that. And, a lot of times I kind of troll him, make him watch this movie that I think he'll hate. But the reason with the movies I pick is I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Okay.
Eventually I think the next one we're going to do is it's going to be Jackie Earl Haley night. So we're going to talk the Bad News Bears, which we both love because baseball season and this and that. And then to kind of torture Alex, we're doing the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which he says he absolutely loathes. I enjoy it for my own reasons, and I picked it for the conversation. I want to see what really makes him hate this and see if he can maybe look at it differently, which he probably won't. But it's good. I think it'll be a fun conversation.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, and the fact that it keeps working is probably a testament.
And like I said in the chat last night, when you and Knight were kind of giving us some praise, we really appreciate. I mean, we like the praise that we get in the chat, but when we see someone on other channels just for the hell of it, saying that they enjoy our show, we really take that in with appreciation, and it means a lot. So thank you for that.
We say it because it's true.
No, much appreciated, man.
All right, so hopefully a week from Saturday, I think that's the 19th. I've got my calendar here because this is our last show for the week. I'm doing 3 shows a week now. So I've got the Something Shitty, This Way Comes Subthread. We've got the Scary Summer series coming. And there's one more thing I want to try to kick off, but I'll see if we can do it. But next week, we have Jurassic Park on Monday. Yeah, we're doing Jurassic Park on Monday. And then on Wednesday, we're going to do Fright Night, the original Fright Night. And then on Thursday, we're doing The Devil's Candy, which is straight out of Hulu. And if you haven't seen The Devil's Candy, like I was saying yesterday, Hulu is putting out fantastic on their streaming channel, independent horror. Small budget, non-pretentious, 90-minute, bang it out, fantastic horror. And The Devil's Candy is in that. And if you have Hulu, get on that and watch it. So that'll be the programming for next week. Thank you once again for showing, and let's get some Starship Troopers or some Total Recall on the roster soon.
Always a pleasure, man. Like I said, it's fun being in the chat, but it's also fun shooting the shit with you in person, how we are here. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Same here. I feel the same, man. And I hope we get a chance to do it again soon. I'll be in touch. We're back and forth pretty much.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Thank you to John for stopping in the comments. If you see this video, I only ask, and I should do this at the beginning, so you don't have to spend 76 minutes to do it. Like the video, please. And if you feel it's worthy, feel free to subscribe. And Eric, hang out for a second, okay? We're going to
absolutely, bud.
Have a good night, everybody.